Hey folks, welcome to our hopefully, final video on reproductive histology. We are looking at an ovary right here. So we're looking at an ovary. One of the things we're going to notice that's going to help us recognize this ovary is the fact that we see follicles. So a follicle is an oocyte. It's going to be a primary oocyte almost all the time when we look at it, surrounded by supporting cells. In this picture here, I am going to see several follicles. This is a follicle right here. This is a follicle right here. These are different varieties of follicles. Here's one over here. Here's some more over here. Okay? So a follicle contains a primary oocyte, and the primary oocyte is this guy in here. That's a primary oocyte, surrounded by a layer of supporting cells, and these are the supporting cells out here. So if I see follicles, I know I got my ovary. Now there's a little more going on in this ovary. I do see an outer layer here. This outer layer is a simple cuboidal epithelium. It is called the germinal epithelium. So that simple cuboidal epithelial layer, it's kind of like the serosa of the ovary, is called the germinal epithelium. And then underneath that germinal epithelium is a layer of connective tissue, which is basically right here, right there. And that connective tissue layer is the ovaries tunica albuginea, which we saw in the guy as well, but it looks a little different here. So, that being said, let's do a little more with this picture. Let's talk about these follicles. The basic type of follicle that we're going to see in the ovary is the primordial follicle. So, primordial follicle, there's a bunch of them here. There's one right here, there's one right here, there's one right here, and then there's two down here. A primordial follicle is going to be a primary oocyte. Oh, I do not want to do that in light green. I don't want to type in light green, do I? A primordial follicle is a primary oocyte surrounded by a simple squamous layer of supporting cells. Primordial follicles are made during in the fetus. So when a female human is a fetus, she actually makes her lifetime supply of primordial follicle. During basically every menstrual cycle between puberty and menopause, some primordial follicles start developing. So every cycle, a new batch of primordial follicles starts developing. And when primordial follicles start developing, they turn into our next follicle type. The next follicle type that we're going to have is going to be the primary follicle. And I have a fairly sizable primary follicle right here. This primary follicle, there it is. This primary follicle is definitely more developed than a primordial follicle. A primary follicle is going to be a primary oocyte surrounded by either a single, or in this case, many layers of supporting cells. So, we've got some primordial follicles, they're the most basic type. Every cycle, some primordials turn into primaries, and primaries start developing. All right, let's look at another picture where we can see more stuff. So let's get out of this one. Here I have another ovary, and there are more things I can see. I can still see the germinal epithelium. I can still see the tunica albuginea. I can also see a lot of primordial follicles. They tend to be grouped in bunches or nests. So I have lots of primordial follicles. Remember, a primordial follicle is a single oocyte, a primary oocyte surrounded by a single layer of flattened cells, so a simple squamous layer of supporting cells. Now I also can see a primary follicle here. This is a primary follicle. Remember, primordials, every cycle some primordials get turned on and become primaries. All right, let's go on to another slide. I see a whole bunch of primordials here. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of primordial follicles. Each of them is going to have a primary oocyte. So there's the primary oocyte right there. There's his nucleus right there. And that black line right there is a follicle cell. Remember, it's a simple squamous layer of surrounding cells. Okay, let's look at another ovary. I'll look at lots of ovaries today and tomorrow. Not really tomorrow, today and today. In this video and the next is what I'm trying to say. What do we got here? We got some primordial follicles up here. I'm going to put some yellow arrows on them. And now I'm also seeing some primary follicles. I got a good distribution, a good diversity of primary follicles here. Whoops. Let's make it like that. Let's make it green. So I'm going to draw a green circle around or a purple circle rather. I don't like purple on this. I'm going to change it to green. That purple circle one and these green circle ones, these are relatively early primary follicles. And then I'm going to have a pair of bigger, more developed primary follicles here, and a very pretty one right here. So those are primary follicles. Most primary follicles are going to die. Some are going to develop onward and become secondary follicles. We'll take a look at one of those in a second. Before we do that, I can see 3 primordial follicles here. See if you can pause your video and find them yourself. Here I can see one complete, beautiful primary follicle. Pause it, find it, reach out, touch it on your computer screen. Here I can find one big, beautiful primary follicle. Again, pause it, find it, touch it. Here I have another primary follicle. See if you can find that one. Now, here I am seeing a secondary follicle. I'm going to draw a big greenish circle around the secondary follicle. So most primary follicles are going to die, but some of them will develop into secondary follicles. A secondary follicle is going to have a lot more layers of supporting cells. We see lots of layers of supporting cells. We see the primary oocyte in the middle right there. One of the defining characteristics of the secondary follicle is going to be this developing space within the supporting cells. This developing space right here. It is called an antrum. So this developing space here is called an antrum. A secondary follicle will have a visible but small antrum. All right, so this is a nice secondary follicle here. If a primary follicle does not die, it'll turn into a secondary follicle. Here I have another secondary follicle. Its antrum is bigger. So I can see his antrum right here. It's bigger. I can see the supporting cells, many layers of them, and I can see a nice primary oocyte. Notice that the primary oocyte could not easily fit in an antrum. That's one little trick you can use to tell that it is still a secondary follicle. Most secondary follicles will die. Generally, only one of a batch of primordials that started will go all the way on and become a mature follicle. And we'll pick up here in the next little ovary video. See you later.